Tomorrow on the show, we're going to have Ted DiBiase, who is the answer to a very interesting trivia question. He's the only man who was supposed to win three of the four major world titles of his during the time he was an active wrestler. And except for about 1 week defending the WWF title that he never won, he never got any of them. So we can talk about a man who came almost close to whatever would count as immortality in this business. He still had a hell of a career. And we can talk about that. Not about today's wrestling with Ted DiBiase, because, as everyone knows, he doesn't watch it. And Friday we've got Gene Kiniski. So that should be. Gene Kiniski was one of the top 3 or 4 wrestlers of the 1960s. And
pretty sure he lives around here.
What?
I think he lives around here.
Either Vancouver, BC, or Blaine, Washington.
Yeah, I think it's Blaine.
Yeah. So, how did you ever hear about Gene Kiniski like at independent shows?
Actually, you know what? I think he came to one of our shows about 3 years ago.
Really?
Yep.
Did they ever talk about him, or is he too far back? You know, like where the old timers and stuff.
The old timers talk about him.
Yeah.
You know, none of the new guys wouldn't know the name, but you know.
Well, yeah, they wouldn't. I mean, he stopped wrestling. Probably early '80s, I would think. Mm-hmm. And his career had pretty much wound down. I mean, I saw Gene Kiniski in the '70s, and he would have been in his. Let's see. I'm figuring. Just trying to figure Kiniski's age. He would have been about in his late 40s when I saw him first, and he was a hell of a worker. Mm-hmm. I mean, like when I remember seeing him in Hawaii. The first time I ever saw him live was in Hawaii, and I mean, he was one of those guys where you go to a live show, and I mean, this was a card with a lot of big names. I mean, Hawaii in the early '70s had most of the AWA guys, so it had very good wrestling. And he, stood out. Like when you watched him, it was sort of like, watching a guy who was a step above everyone else. And then I remember one time he came into San Francisco. This is late '70s for a battle royal, and he had to be right around 50, 51, and looked every bit of it, maybe even older than that. And you see this old guy. And what a worker he was. He was like the 3rd or 4th best guy in the Battle Royal. And that's, something, he was running around with the Funks and people like that were the big stars of that era. Mm-hmm. So it
almost makes me wonder, like, they had that stupid evening gown match at the pay-per-view. And I was thinking, if they put Pat Patterson and Gerald Briscoe in the ring and had them do a short wrestling match, imagine what it would look like in comparison.
Oh, well, Pat Patterson for about 90 seconds can still go, because I've seen those little clips of him and stuff. Because he throws those great punches, and he knows how to sell. Briscoe, I don't know. Gerald Briscoe was never a great wrestler. I mean, he was all right. I mean, he was good, I guess. But I mean, what I remember about the Briscoe brothers was, when Jack tagged in, it was like all action. When Jerry was in, it was, it wasn't bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, Jack Briscoe was an awesome wrestler. Kiniski, there was something about, what was another? There's another Kiniski thing that I remember. Oh, yeah. Gene Kiniski, this is the famous match with Baba. I remember when Baba died, and they kept showing the clips of the match with Gene Kiniski and Baba, which was from a baseball stadium show it's probably like 65, 66, Osaka Baseball Stadium. And they were out there for like 70 minutes, 65 minutes. I mean, it was an hour and then an overtime. And I'm just watching this, and it's like, it wouldn't really hold up today, because Kiniski didn't have the weightlifter's, bodybuilder's body, if you know what I mean. He kind of just looked like a big guy who was a football player that didn't lift weights, that kind of a look.
Yeah.
But I mean, and the work wasn't the spectacular flying around, but I mean, when he hit guys, I mean, you could hear, it was a very realistic style of wrestling, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of which, we're talking about Gene Kiniski. We got Don Murraco, and we were talking about Hawaii, who grew up in Honolulu, Hawaii, and actually as a kid may have watched Gene Kiniski. Is that possible, Don?
Yeah, real possible.
Yeah,
he used to come over here all the time.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I'm late.
No problem. Don, I want to introduce for newer fans. Don Murraco was one of the top stars in wrestling from pretty much his debut, which I guess would be 69, 70, through, of course, his probably best-known period would have been early 80s World Wrestling Federation, the cage match with Jimmy Snuka that Mick Foley has made legendary because it was the impetus for a lot of what he did. And Don Murraco wrestled, pretty much all over every major territory, top name throughout the 70s as well. And Don, we want to welcome you to the show.
Oh, thanks. You got stuck in a roadblock in Miami Bay, so I was a little late.
What have you been doing as far as do you wrestle at all now, or just
from time to time? If somebody calls me up, I haven't pursued any work, but every once in a while, Barry Orton gave me a call. He was running a show. Sometimes there's some, if I can get away for a weekend, I don't really, just to get out of the house for a couple of days.
Do you follow it on TV?
A little, yeah.
Do you have any kind of thoughts as far as the current scene? It's so different from during your heyday.
It's pretty good. It's enjoyable. The interview format is a little different, but between Vince's show and Turner's show, two completely different animals.
What are your thoughts? You would have Dwayne Johnson, The Rock? You probably bumped into him when he was 5 years old in California, right?
Oh yeah, I grew up. In fact, every time my wife gets around some people, she pulls out pictures of when he used to babysit my daughter and stuff.
Oh, really?
He was, I knew him. I was with Rocky in San Francisco, and then of course I wrestled Peter here in Hawaii. My the grandfather, I wrestled Peter here in Hawaii for years, off and on. Every time I'd come home, and he spent a lot of time with his grandmother and stuff, and then Rocky in New York and. I spent a lot of time with, I was married to Rocky off and on throughout my career. So I know the kid. I knew the kid real well. And so I'm real happy to see, what a success he's become.
Is there any other wrestlers from the current, in the current scene where you knew him when they were kids, or just him?
Pretty much him. I heard Bob Orton's kid is coming on.
Randy Orton, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you know him as a kid? Because I know you were Bob Orton for a long time.
Yeah, I knew him. Not as well as I knew Dwayne. The Rock. For some reason, we always happened to be, in the same area as Rocky. So I pretty much saw him grow up. Between the mother, Otto, the mother, and my wife were good friends. And then Leah Maivia, I used to work for her every time I came back to Hawaii. And he was always over there. He was a spoiled little brat. The grandmother used to spoil him rotten.
Have you read his book yet?
No, I haven't.
No,
I haven't.
Childhood stuff might have compared.
I haven't gotten anybody's books yet.
Mick Foley's book is really good. No, we were wondering about his dating stories in high school.
Oh, yeah.
How much is true and how much isn't?
I don't know.
When you look back on your career in different territories, what are your thoughts on what would be like your favorite territory you had to work? I mean, I know you worked a lot of San Francisco. You worked a lot of Florida. I mean, any now that I think back on your career, with the exception of the early run in the AWA, you were always kind of in warm climate territories.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. I was always looking for surf. I pretty much stayed around, and Australia too. I used to pretty much travel back and forth between Frisco and Florida, and I spent a couple of years in Australia, and I'd always come back to Hawaii till I got locked into WWF, and they became, like a mogul overnight.
Now, your early career, you were kind of typecast as a babyface, yet you probably really. I don't know. I could be wrong about this. I would think that you would have your greatest success as a heel. I mean, you were the stronger, I think, as a heel in San Francisco, and certainly WWF. During the period with Jimmy Snuka and Bob Backlund and all that, you were working as a heel. Was that more comfortable for you?
Yeah. In fact, it was really hard going back to being The Rock and all that. People go, wow, you're The Rock, you were The Rock, and then I was, oh God, I hated The Rock. I had no time for The Rock after all those years of being a heel. I just, it was just a role just was kind of forced into. But yeah, I used to have a lot of fun as a heel, controlling the match, leading the people. And then I just had a great array of baby faces to work with all throughout my career.
Any particular favorite opponent?
Jeez, I don't know. It'd be hard to say. I had so many great ones. Ivan Koloff when I was a baby face. I always, people, I think, have a tendency to forget what a performer Ivan was, because he's been, in and out for different types of places. But I had a cage match with him in St. Petersburg that people, spoke more of that, highly of that, than the one Snuka and I had. Then Snuka and Pedro Morales and Steamboat and Bob Backlund, all the guys in WWF, even, like Hulk and those guys. So, some guys were always money, some guys were hard. Even the guys who were money, they were hard, they were easy to take.
What, as far as Australia, who were the guys there when during the period you went down there?
When I went down there, Curtis and Mark Lewin had just about left. I was in New Zealand with Curtis and Mark Lewin, and then when I went to Australia, I went across in Larry O'Day and Ronnie Miller were running the Ed Wiskowski, Colonel De Beers. He was there, Rick Martel, Bugsy McGraw. Let me just turn this offhand. Butcher Brannigan, Fuji. He was down in Australia.
You were with Fuji in a lot of different areas as far as your career, because you teamed with him a lot. He managed you at some points, right?
Yeah.
I think you feuded with him at when you were in Babyface turn. Does that sound right?
I'm sorry?
I think you may have feuded with him. I know you did the stuff on TNT, Fuji Vice.
Oh, yeah, all that, yeah. Cooler classics.
Yeah.
Classics for the scrappy. I knew Fuji from Dean's Gym right down here in Waikiki. And he was wrestling, and I was in high school and stuff, and I went on the road. He had marital problems. He ended up in Portland, Oregon, where I was pretty much starting out between Vancouver and Portland. So that's, I knew Fuji before I even got in the business. And then, we're always close friends.
Now, what was your start in the business? Were you like, how did you make the connections to get in? I just remember you being like a big, really big guy early on, not weight-wise, but muscularity-wise, in an era where there weren't a lot of that. And then, actually, by the time, latter part of your career, you were a monster almost. But I mean, as far as what was your original, breaking in period?
Lord Blears. Well, Lord Tallyho Blears, the 50 State Wrestling over here. He and Ed Francis ran 50 State Wrestling in Hawaii. And it was a show that was light years ahead. You could probably compare it to WWF right now, with minus the pyrotechnics, which, you're talking about probably 35, 40 years ago. But, like Johnny Baran, Curtis Alcea, Ripper Collins, and all the talent. Gene, you're just mentioning Gene Kiniski. As I came on, he was the world champion, NWA at the time, and he would come through for Vancouver. Jim Haiti. They had guys coming through from Japan and Australia that would stop for vacations and stuff. So they had a tremendous amount of talent coming through Hawaii, and their TV show was just out of sight for its time. It didn't compare to any other wrestling shows. Johnny Bryan was coming out of coffins. Ripper Collins was swishing and dressing in drag all over. It was
really.
Oh yeah, it was nuts. It was great. They were setting fire, and the Sheik from Detroit was coming into town. So they were setting stuff on fire. They have old tapes. I guess Ed Francis took some tapes back to the NWA convention at the time. When they had it, the promoters looked at it and they just shook their head and said, "This will never happen. This will never take place." And that's pretty much the face of wrestling today. But Lord Blears, he sent me to. He was the one. Me, Curtis Alcea, and Monica Mossman in Japan. We were his only three proteges. He sent me to Vancouver, and I started with Sandra Kovacs and Kiniski. Were the promoters then.
And was your first big territory as far as notoriety-wise AWA?
Yeah. But I was a match that the Lord booked me with Fuji, because Fuji was, we were both green at the time, but hard workers and pretty young. And Vern Gagne, they had Vern Gagne watch the match, and Gagne wanted me in Minneapolis. I didn't know that Jim Barnett wanted me in Australia, too, at the same time. But Blears didn't want me to go to Australia, so he only told me about Vern's offer. So I ended up in Minneapolis, and after that was I lasted there a couple of years, and the snow just killed me.
What was your thoughts of the cold weather? And I know you teamed with Jimmy Snuka, although Jimmy Snuka used a different name in those days.
Yeah, I hated it there.
Really?
I was young and still did, was interested in surfing and the beach and everything else. And even though I started skiing and doing some other stuff, the traveling and the weather and the climate and the seasons and everything, just they were too much for me. So I lasted about a year and a half, 2 years. Then ended up in San Francisco for Roy Shires.
Any specific? Did you know Kim Allen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
I used to live in Santa Cruz, in fact, and I used to commute from Santa Cruz to all the Northern California towns.
Yeah, because I bumped into him about a year ago, and I mentioned wrestling, and all of a sudden he just goes, he said he used to train with you, and
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Santa Cruz. Yeah, he's from Santa Cruz. I think he's in San Jose now.
I think he works for the police or fire department in Santa Cruz.
Oh, he's still in Santa Cruz.
Yeah,
I haven't seen him in 9 or 10 years.
Yeah, he promotes bodybuilding shows.
Yeah.
I mean, I bumped into him. God, when I bumped into him at the beach, I mean, he's probably, mid-40s, and I mean, ripped abs and tremendous condition.
Yeah.
I'd say 215, 220, maybe 215-ish. But I mean, for his age, in incredible condition.
Yeah, he was into that bodybuilding. He got, I don't think he ever wrestled.
No, he never did.
Yeah.
His closest thing, I guess, was being friends with you. Did you ever consider bodybuilding or powerlifting or anything like that?
The diet word isn't in my vocabulary. that diet is a killer, especially living here in Hawaii. There's so many ethnic foods, so many starches. I thought about it a little bit. Right now I'm recovering. I just had carpal tunnel surgery done on both my hands, so I'm on a work run. Is that
related to wrestling, or is that just related?
No, it was rough from work related. I work longshore now. Stevedore in Hawaii. For Matson and some of the other shipping companies around here.
And we have a ton of emails here for Don Murraco, as well as a full bank of calls. Earlier in the show, before you were on, Don, we were talking about WCW Saturday Night, which used to be called Georgia Championship Wrestling and later World Championship Wrestling. It had its final show, actually, in that time slot was this past Saturday, and people were talking about one of their favorite moments. And one moment that people have remembered was when you were there with Roddy Piper, and it was an angle, actually, which turned, you guys were a tag team, and it turned Roddy Piper babyface when you were about to attack Gordon Soley. And do you remember what led up to all this as far as, that angle and Roddy Piper going babyface? Because Roddy Piper was an awesome heel in those days.
Yeah. Let me think. Oh yeah, that was what really led. It was turning naturally, and he was starting to turn babyface anyway, because he'd been there about a year and a half, 2 years, doing the commentary and everything else. But I think like a week or 2 weeks previous to that is some guy pulled a knife on him in Raleigh or something, one of the Charlotte towns. We were both working Charlotte and Atlanta at the time. And some guy pulled a knife in the thing, and it was around a bunch of kids and stuff, and somebody cut Piper with and Piper kind of went in, and saved the guy, or and got scratched with the knife, and the papers picked it up and carried it, so he was pretty much ready to turn already, and that kind of just pushed it over the hill.
This is from someone who is bringing up that you had a real unique way of delivering an Irish whip. You did the one-handed whip, and did you learn that from someone, or did you just pick that up on your own? And also, you were one of the first people to do the tombstone pile driver, also, as I recall.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess the Irish. What's the Irish whip? Is the turnbuckle?
We just whipped the guy with the one arm and the turnbuckle. So I think in those days everyone used to do it with two arms.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess that was just something that came, you know, I just picked up myself.
Let's go to Mike in Florida. Mike, you're first up with Don.
Hello? Hi, Dave.
Hello there.
Hi, Don?
Hi.
Yeah, I had a question about your matches with Jimmy Snuka. Did any of that heat actually translate to the dressing room? Because you seem to be going hot and heavy. Were you friends?
No, we you know, well, as far as everybody's smart and stuff now, actually, you know, the whole world back to Dave Meltzer's magazines. But I think the more heated, the more intense the rivalry,
right?
The more bitter and the more hateful, the more, you know, death intent it seems. I think the guys are probably better coordinated together.
Yeah, so there was never any disagreements or anything?
No.
And I had a question for Dave about Hogan and Savage. What's going on with him disparaging against him on the radio, the Bubba Love Sponge?
Did you say something bad about Savage? I didn't even...
Hogan and Savage, what's going on? The disparaging remarks on Bubba the Love Sponge show. Is that a shoot or an angle or what?
What do you think?
Probably. What, Brian, is there? Do you know what's going on there?
I'm trying to figure what he said.
The disparaging remarks that Hogan and Savage have been exchanging on the radio up in Florida?
I haven't heard him.
Okay, it's got to be. I think it's got to be an angle. Although they've had their problems in the past, but
really,
you know, I think that they're probably doing something, you know, to build up wherever they're going. Fox Network thing, probably.
Yeah, are you pretty sure they're still friends?
Hogan, I don't know if they're friends or not, Hogan and Savage. But I think that if they're doing something, I mean, Hogan's using that Bubba the Love Sponge thing. Like, I think he calls him up every day now to kind of get whatever he wants over, you know.
Right.
Since he can't do those interviews on television with guys that aren't in the company.
You know, it seemed like it was pretty serious, but you never know, huh?
You never completely know.
Right.
With Hulk Hogan, you never know.
Thanks a lot.
But it's always a calculated move.
Has Dusty got a territory going in Florida?
Dusty's running small indies in Georgia, right, Brian?
Dusty? Yeah, he's got a little group down there.
Yeah.
Oh, he's still with WCW?
He announces this show that I think they're starting soon on Turner South, which would be like, you know, old WCW shows. But he's not, I guess technically he's not with the WCW organization because he's actually still working for ECW.
Oh.
You know, he was at their TV taping in Chicago Saturday night.
Oh, because Johnny Walker told me that he had started his own thing in Florida.
Yeah, Turnbuckle Promotions or something, I think it's called.
I don't know.
So would you bump into Johnny Walker up there now?
I see Johnny Walker, yeah.
Yeah. How's he doing?
He's doing fine. Doing real well. I see Curtis Yokea, Lord Blears, Sammy Steamboat once in a while. Don Lewin's around.
Whatever happened to Mark Lewin?
He's in an island off of Washington somewhere, I think. He just kind of they went to Australia for a couple of weeks to start a promotion down there, but that went south. It's about as far south as you can go to.
This is from Tony Aragona, who wants to know your thoughts of various wrestlers that you worked with during your career. He's mentioned, I'll just read down some names and you can respond. Jack Briscoe.
He was a good amateur wrestler. Had good matches with him.
When you first went down to Florida, they kind of positioned you as the new Jack Briscoe.
Yeah.
You know, when he was already established star and you were coming in as kind of a young guy.
Yeah, I think he had the NWA championship at the time. And we worked a few things. I guess
go ahead.
Looked at like.
Go ahead. What about Curtis Iokea?
Well, he's a close friend of mine. He's one of the all-time greatest, you know. His interviews and matches and, you know, stuff he did. He never really got exposed in the mainland a lot, you know. The majority of his work was in Australia and Japan. And some of the stuff and the ideas and, you know, just the things he was one of the forerunners of, you know, professional wrestling that has, you know, come about today.
Did you pattern your interviews after Curtis?
Oh, sure. I'm sure I did. You know, I grew up with him, you know, listening to him on TV. Him and Ripper Collins and Johnny Moran. So I'm sure, you know, subliminally or consciously or subconsciously, you know, there was a lot of Curtis and a lot of different guys in my interviews. Yeah.
Pedro Morales.
Pedro Morales, I had a lot of good runs with him. A hard worker, you know. He was a real gentleman.
Bob Backlund?
Oh, a great athlete. Never really given much credit for, you know, the way he stayed, you know, the way he was able to maintain his own personality, which was, you know, referred to as nothing or none by, you know, most people. But the way, you know, he was just able to keep his own, you know, take your vitamins, say your prayers, you know, drink your milk. He was, you know, he was like the real guy. You know, maybe Hulk took his stuff off of Backlund because, you know, Backlund was the guy. Say your prayers, eat your vitamins, go to bed early, train hard. I always get great respect just for all the guys you've mentioned so far.
How about Pat Patterson?
Pat Patterson was a hard worker. Always thinking about wrestling. Him and I didn't agree on everything all the time, but he was a hard worker. Unfortunately, he came after Ray Stevens, who was, you know, one of the all-time, at least one of my all-time greats. So he was, you know, more or less looked at as, unfortunately, because he did have a tremendous amount of talent, he was pretty much looked at as a Ray clone.
What do you think about his current role in the WWF?
Oh, yeah, you watched Patterson on the WWF TV in the last couple of weeks?
Yeah. I think he's in his flaming glory. I don't think he's ever been so happy in his life.
You know, well, you were in San Francisco and wrestled both Patterson and Stevens. I guess probably, and I even remember a tag match, you and Fuji against Patterson and Stevens at the Cow Palace that popped into my head. How would you compare the two of them as far as working goes? Because, you know, growing up in San Francisco, it was like Ray Stevens was the god of wrestling, and Pat Patterson was the guy who, as you said, I mean, he was like the top guy after Ray Stevens went to the AWA, and Pat Patterson, I remember having a lot of great matches with you and with everyone in the area. But,
yeah.
How would you compare the two of them? Because I guess you worked a lot with Bockwinkel and Stevens too.
Yeah. With Stevens, everything just happened. He never had to think about anything. He never had to prepare. He never had to plan. He was just a natural. He's one of these guys, you know, like Mickey Mantle, go out, get drunk, come into the park and hit three home runs. And where Patterson, on the other hand, worked. You know, let's do this, put this in, put that in. Don't forget this, remind that, remember this, do that, do this, you know. So they were actually night and day, really. Because Ray would, you know, he'd go out there and just, you know, blow the joint apart and not even, you know, well, I'm sure he was thinking, you know, but Ray was just a natural where Pat would, you know, as good as he was, Pat worked to be that good.
Let's go to Dave in Tucson. Dave, you're next up with Don Murraco.
How you doing, Dave?
Hey, I'm doing good.
By the way, before I asked Don Murraco, I was cleaning out my room today, and I found an Observer from 1986. This is a collector's item. Listen to this. It says, just a few notes since I don't pay attention to this area in the WWF. It says, Ted Arcidi, the power lifter with the 700-pound bench press, made his pro debut at a recent taping. Obviously, we won't know for a long time whether he'll amount to anything because pro wrestling is a craft that, except in rare cases, takes years to learn. Would you say Ted Arcidi learned that craft?
I guess not. Don, were you around with Ted Arcidi?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was there. In fact, he went to Australia. He went on an Australian tour when he was still wrestling, when Andre was still alive.
Yeah.
For some reason, Andre couldn't stand the guy.
Really?
I don't know if it was because he was the world's strongest man or something. I don't know. But Andre just didn't like him. And then when you get a giant not liking him, life can be hard.
You just don't want to be in the same zip code.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one of those observers I found, you wrote about the Murraco Steamboat feud going too long. You wrote that it was a 9-month feud with no ending.
Yeah.
Do you remember,
it was a long feud, and then it went to was it Steamboat feuded with Murraco and Fuji, and Mr. Fuji too.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I remember that. How they started it. Wasn't it like a Steamboat Fuji match, and then like Murraco came out, and you hit him with a chair. It was like the most gimmicked chair I've ever seen in my life.
Okay.
Yeah. Also, what was it like working with the Grand Wizard?
What was the Grand Wizard like, Don?
Very selfless man. He'd do anything. He'd do everything to get his guy over. Didn't worry about himself. Wasn't he wasn't he wasn't so. He just his job was as a manager was to get you over wherever his guy was, and that's all. He didn't try to get himself over. He was trying to get just trying to get you in the match over.
Yeah, I was very, very young as he died, so I really haven't seen much stuff with him. What was your opinion of the Grand Wizard, Dave?
I mean, I just remember him being a very good interview. In those days, in the WWF days, the managers at that point didn't do a lot of the physical stuff around the ring, and the Wizard, compared to like the managers of later years and in other territories, he was more of a guy who dressed up in a very very funny ring attire and did some really good promos to get, the heels over against whoever the champion and the top baby faces were in those days.
Yeah, didn't he managed Luke Graham, I think? I'm trying to remember.
He managed a million people. I mean, there was, Billy Graham.
How old? Do you know how old he would be if he were still alive?
The Wizard? I don't know. Don, do you have any idea how old the Wizard would be if he was still alive?
Oh God, in his early 80s, maybe.
I would see. If he was let's say he was in his mid-50s when he died, and that could be wrong. I could be wrong about that. And I would say he probably died around 82, 83. So maybe early mid-70s. Someone will actually email us with the correct answer to that one before the end of the show, I'm sure.
Yeah, in those old observers, you were extremely critical of the WWF.
Oh yeah, because it changed wrestling and it destroyed the territories. Don, I was actually going to be my next question for you is that what was it like as you were there really on the ground floor when this thing went from being a regional company to the big national company and everything changed and you were with Piper and Bob Orton. Did your life change, or was it just or were just kind of sitting there watching with amazement or disbelief or total belief in what was going on and how wrestling was changing in those days?
A lot of both. My life changed a lot. I wasn't able to get back to Hawaii anymore to get, kind of get grounded and get focused and stuff. And so I was pretty much locked into the business as it went. And as it was growing and into the pay-per-view and into the cable times and into the cable syndications away from the different territories.
Hey Don, I was wondering when you did the Saturday Night Main Event shows, when you were performing on NBC, was there an extreme amount of pressure for you to perform to another level? Because whenever I watch, even though the Observer that I found, Dave, you gave a horrible review of the Saturday Night Main Event, it seemed like they upped the pace and put on a lot of good matches. I remember the Rockers and the Brainbusters wrestled a lot of times on the Saturday Night Main Event. Do you remember, Dave? Do you remember a Blue Blazer Ted DiBiase match?
Vaguely.
Yeah,
actually, vaguely remember. I remember the Saturday Night Main Event. They used to always have, they would usually start out with a Hogan match, to further the program, and then they would usually fill it out with, the real good workers, and they would go up and down, and, and then sometimes they weren't as good. I don't know. They did a lot of... I remember
a really lame, judo jacket match they had with Murraco and Steamboat on one Saturday Night Main Event.
I don't remember that one. I remember the feud. I remember a lot of good matches, though, in that era, with Terry Funk and JYD, believe it or not. Murraco and Steamboat. Those were like the two big marriages I remember on the road that were always usually really good.
Terry Funk seemed like the only guy who could just get a good match out of the Junkyard Dog. Like, Ric Flair couldn't really do it.
Yeah, I remember we were talking about that stuff. God, Terry Funk, I used to think he was killing himself to get good matches out of the Junkyard Dog. I mean, it was like...
He may have been.
That's the whole family.
Yeah.
The whole family. The old man was like that. The old man, Terry was a lot like the... Junior was a consummate professional. Junior was, maybe as exciting as watching paint dry, but by the time you watched his hour go through, you'd really seen a match. Whereas Terry was like the old man. But, that fight out into the parking lot, into somebody's car, into a pickup truck. That the old man used to do. That Terry's still doing all the old man stuff.
Hey, Don, you look at that WrestleMania 3, you wrestled the first match with Bob Orton. Do you consider that one as the highlight of your career?
And where's that?
The big WrestleMania in Pontiac Silverdome.
Oh, with Martel and Zink. I don't know if it was a highlight. It was certainly, it was quite a 90-something thousand people. It was a hell of an experience.
Yeah, I also wanted to ask you, and if you don't feel comfortable answering this question, that's fine. When you were playing The Rock, did you use any steroids?
Yeah, I went through the juice period.
Like, was there any pressure for you for WWF performers at the time to do that?
I think it was internal pressure. The office never put pressure on you. But, you saw Hulk and you saw all these guys that were, it was no longer a case of getting down and grinding the match out for 25, 30 minutes, and getting something. I thought Dory Funk's senior style, that old wrestling style, and the selling and the working, and it transpired past that. So I don't think there was no external pressure, but I think to keep up with the Joneses, yeah. There's a lot of, I wanted to get better. Wanted to look competitive. Since that was the arena was reached that type of competitiveness, and that look had taken place,
In that era, your physique and how you looked was probably far more important than even in the 70s.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the 70s, you were kind of judged. Would you say you were judged more on kind of your athletics, and in the 80s more on your look?
Yeah. There was a different working technique from the 70s to then 83, 84. It just kind of changed, And it started maybe a little bit before that, but in the 70s. There was, the working technique was different. The working, the selling and the working and everything else was different. And then when you became slave to the cable and the instant replay and everything else, the timing changed.
I think part of it may have varied on who you worked for, too.
Yeah,
that's true, too. Roy Shires is a slave driver.
Here's today's question. Don Murraco once wrestled a 60-minute match in Madison Square Garden. Who was his opponent in that match? So, Don, you better not tell anyone. We've also got a couple of big...
Did we have a winner yesterday?
Yeah, we had two winners yesterday. I don't remember their names, though, but we did have two winners. The answer was Harley Race for the King of the Ring, who actually went on the road and defended the King of the Ring title. In fact, Don Murraco was the first King of the Ring in Foxborough Stadium in 85, 86. When they actually did the first tournament. Let me just get through this real quick. The USA Network lost the case. The judge just ruled against them, I guess probably within the last hour. Let me read this. It says, USA Networks Incorporated lost its court battle against World Wrestling Federation, Entertainment Inc., and Viacom Inc. Tuesday. The decision means the four WF series that are currently carried on the USA Network will move to the Nashville Network and MTV, which are both owned by Viacom in September. So that's... Sunday Night Heat's going to be on MTV, And Livewire, Superstars, and Raw will move to the Nashville network. I don't know what that means. Guess we'll have to find out what that means for ECW. There's not really much else to that other than there's a quote here I wanted to give you. Brian, I thought you'd get a kick out of this. From Stephen Chow. He's the president of USA Cable, who says, quote, listen to this quote, quote, we would have preferred a different decision, but as we have said, the loss of the WWF will have a negligible effect on our ratings and a positive effect on our cash flow. That's why they sued.
We would have preferred.
Oh, they would have preferred. They would have preferred to win, yeah. And also, the New Jersey State Senate yesterday voted 36-1 to approve the measure to regulate extreme wrestling. It's the bill that we've talked about a million times on this show. The bill goes to New Jersey Governor Christine Todd Whitman for her signature, and she will sign it, being that she was one of the original sponsors of the bill. So that bill is going to be law very shortly. Okay. Let's see. Before we get back to the calls, Don, you brought up something that's kind of interesting and so did Brian, as far as the as far as in different parts of the country, working for Eddie Graham, working for Roy Shires, working for Vern Gagne, Vince McMahon Sr. As far as in the ring and outside of the ring, what were the differences? What do you remember the most about him? Who was the hardest to deal with? Who was the easiest? Who wanted the most? Things like that.
Roy Shires, that was a high spot territory. He wanted high spots. He wanted to get together, get 4 or 5 high spots every match. Ready, all set to go for the match. With Eddie Graham, that was a wrestling territory. They wanted more wrestling, and then of course they'd kill the first 4 or 5 matches up, and they'd come with Dusty or Mephisto or somebody like that. So, but Eddie Graham was more of a wrestling, grinded out type area. Vern Gagne was early marketable type place where they had different markets, kind of like the late WWF or the early WWF with Vince Sr., where you had your market set up, and he had like Milwaukee and Chicago and Minneapolis, St. Paul, and those types. So it was kind of an already big star situation where they'd feed you the squash matches and just send out the stars. Where the first 2 territories, San Francisco and Florida, you pretty much worked them in the town from first match to last. And then the early WWF with Vince Sr. was pretty much the same. You were made a star on TV. They fed you down the throat for 6, 7, 8 weeks, and then you went out and you hit all the major arenas and the smaller arenas.
Was there any kind of a big buzz for you when you first worked Madison Square Garden, or was it nothing? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think everybody does. The Garden, New York. The city's so big they had to name it twice. Yeah. But I sold out Cow Palace. Had big houses in Tampa, St. Pete, Atlanta, Omni, and stuff like that. And even working around there before I got actually to the Garden. In fact, my first match in the Garden was with Rick Martel. It wasn't an A-title match. It was where I came around kind of different. Where they usually used to put the top heel on TV 6 to 9 weeks, and you come right in with the champion. Where I came in and just kind of worked my way up from there. A little different. The pattern was still pretty much the same. I was just individually a little bit different the way I went about it at that
time. Let's see. Let's go to Adam in Brooklyn. Adam, what's going on?
Oh, hey. Hey, Dave. Hey, Don. I'm a big fan of both you guys. I'd like to say that one of my favorite Don Murraco moments was on a Coliseum home video when him and Mr. Fuji went to Hollywood to audition for different television shows. I was wondering if you guys remember that. And,
oh, yeah.
And, they did a Miami Vice parody.
Fuji Vice.
Yeah.
Fuji Vice. Yeah, on TNT.
Yeah. I thought that stuff was hilarious. And also,
that was one of the follow-ups later where they were kicking us out of all the studios and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, we walked up to the gate. Everybody else was in limos, and Fuji are on foot walking in the gate. And they put a guy, and the guy, get the hell out of here. So, yeah, there was some fun stuff.
And also, I was watching some tapes I got of Stampede Wrestling, And I was wondering what your thoughts of wrestling there, Don, were, because I know you were the champion when you beat Mike Shaw.
Where was this now?
Stampede Wrestling.
Stampede in the 80s.
Oh, yeah. Stampede, yeah. It's just it was just a trip, a pleasure to go there and be involved with Stu and work, what was going on at the time with those guys. It pretty much it had reached its peak, it had gone down. WWF was already established there, and there were Davey Boy was home, so I was kind of my 8 or 10 months in the independent circuit, and it's fun to go and just meet, get to know Stu and go up to the house for the Sunday dinner and then stuff like that. Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, I always like that kind of Stampede style wrestling where they concentrate more, on good old wrestling matches.
Oh yeah.
And it's like amazing watching it, because I was like watching the tape I got, and it had so many like stars of today, like back then. I mean, like guys like Steve Blackman were wrestling, in Stampede, and it's amazing. Like he had long hair back there too.
Yeah, Jushin Liger and all those guys.
Liger and Hase, I think.
Hase.
Yeah.
Hase just got elected to the House of Representatives Sunday.
Yeah, I heard. I also like to comment on WCW about Terry Taylor.
Uh-huh.
I think he's doing a really good job and doing something Russo couldn't, and that's getting over the mid-card talent. Because Russo, he always claimed that he thinks everybody should seem important and have a gimmick and everything. But when he's there, he gives them so little time individually that people really don't have time to start caring about them. And what Terry Taylor's been able to do since he came in is give guys like 3 Count and even guys like Mark Jindrak and Sean O'Haire time to shine and get pops from the crowd and get people interested. And
they're not with Russo, I always sense they were rushing from thing to thing, and with Taylor at least they give every segment, I guess, adequate time to make it.
Yeah, and things seem to make sense. I mean, sometimes my deals might be obvious, what they're doing, but at least it serves a purpose. Like with Duggan and Goldberg, I thought that was really well done, even though it wasn't the greatest match. How they built up Duggan had cancer for even though he wrestled many times after that, but and Duggan actually got Goldberg a lot of heat, and he was played the face in that match, and they got their job done getting Goldberg over for at least for one night, I thought.
At least for one night, they did a tremendous. Yeah, as far as getting people to boo Goldberg, they did a tremendous job.
Yeah. And one more thing, do you think that the cruiserweight title will be put into effect any more, strongly now that Terry Taylor is Booker? Because I know he wanted to bring in the, make the WF light heavyweight title stronger when he was there, but that kind of got kiboshed by Russo.
Well, I think it'll be more than with Russo. There was no hope, realistically. With Taylor, Terry Taylor used to be like a junior heavyweight champion, very, very early in his career. I think that it'll have more of a fair shake than it has had in the last, whatever it's been, 8 months. As far as how prominent it'll be, the problem with that division as compared to the glory days of that division is that the talent level isn't there that was there, before. I mean, if you look at all the guys they had, they're either in WWF or they're injured and retired or they've been fired. So it's really, there's really not a lot of guys there now for that junior heavyweight or cruiserweight division. As I mean, you can, and then there's a problem of, do you want to put Billy Kidman in there? Which is probably his most effective in-ring matches would be in there, but then it's sort of like people would go, he just feuded with Hulk Hogan, now you're going to make him a cruiserweight, you know what I mean? So it's, I don't know what he's going to do with it, but, I don't think he's going to put it on.
At least they won't put it on a woman.
They won't put it on a woman, or they won't put it on Ed Ferrara, yeah.
Well, I think even though they might not have the caliber worker, like a Malenko or Guerrero, if they give, even the power plant guys like Elix Skipper, good time to put on a decent match, the belt can get over again. It's just a matter of how they play, and not
you're right. And they do have they have Ray, they have Juventud Guerrero, they have Christopher Daniels, and there's guys out there that they could bring in as well. So yeah, they could have a good division if they treated it like they were serious about it.
If you treat anything like you care about it, it can get over, even if you don't have the best talent. Like Duggan, Duggan's not that great, but people love him, and they pushed it hard, and I thought did a very good job.
They did the best job they could have done with that situation. I don't know, something with the cancer. I don't know. It's kind I was like going back and forth on that one last night. You know, it's just like, God, you know, he really had cancer, and they were like really trying to like make us believe he was gonna, you know, he was gonna die.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like,
but I don't
know.
I really love his promo last night, Duggan. It's like, you know, a man's got to do what a man's got to do. I think that
same promo he's been doing for 18 years.
Yeah, I know. But, well,
I mean, he used to do
some, you know, crazy promos in WCW, like when he called Hogan a great technical wrestler.
Well, not always, but that was one of the classic lines of all time. It's like, you know, yeah, I could beat you in a fight, but Cherry, you may be a great technical wrestler. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was definitely the first time Hogan's been called that.
All right, Dave. Thanks for the time.
The last time, too.
The only time, yeah. Okay.
I gotta say, the best thing Terry Taylor's done is have Tank Abbott knock out both of Chronic.
Yeah.
God, that was awesome.
Tank Abbott dancing is so, it's like one of those things that's so bad it's good.
Yep.
I don't know. The 3 count thing, I mean, it's like, that is the worst song I've ever heard of wrestling. That thing the 3 count's dancing to now. Oh, let's go to Chad in North Carolina. Chad, you're next up.
Hey guys, how's it going?
It's going good.
I heard a few weeks ago you were talking about the Hogan A&E biography and some of the ridiculous quotes he said.
Yes.
You forgot one.
Uh-oh.
He said that Andre the Giant died right after WrestleMania 3.
Yeah, that's short time after. Yeah, 6 years. Yeah, I know. That one's been going around for a while.
Yeah.
I think that one was created by Vince in the. Where did he create that one first? Brian, do you remember when that was first said?
That might have been that Secrets of... what was it called?
No. It might have been the... wasn't there an
Unreal History?
No. It might have been Unreal History. It might have been the MSNBC. Didn't they do a thing on... No. You know what that was? It was WrestleMania. The WrestleMania, remember?
I think the Unreal History was even before that, and I think he said it there.
That Andre died. I remember on the WrestleMania thing, they tried to act like Andre was going to die, and Vince gave him like an extra year of life by giving him the heel turn in the Hogan match, like he had something to live for. When in fact, the guy and then after he did the program, he died, and it was like, wait, he died like 6 years later.
I'm pretty sure it was that Unreal History show.
Psychosis going to ECW?
Who?
Psychosis.
I don't know where that stands. I know they were there was a lot of phone calls going back and forth, and I kind of expect it to happen. Yeah. I don't know that it's a final deal yet, though.
And the last thing, do you know if and when Super Crazy will be back in the U.S.?
Whenever the paperwork's done and the immigration department lets him back in. I mean, they're working on it, and it hasn't happened yet.
All right, guys, thanks.
All right, you're very welcome. Let's go to Matt in Vancouver. Matt, what's going on?
Hi, how are you guys doing tonight?
Very good.
Well, that's good. Rock?
Right.
Hi, how are you doing?
All right.
Well, that's good. I'd like to know what you think of Mr. Fuji and Lou Albano in their professional career and their personal lives, and are you still friends with them?
Yeah, I'm still friends with them. Boy, both their careers I thought ran quite a distance and were extremely successful. And I don't know, as for their personal life, I don't think I have any business commenting on it. Knowing them both so well, might leave me up for some lawsuits, even though or lose a couple of friends.
I would also like to know what was this thing with Sugar Ray Robinson that you went with? What sort of angle did you do with him, or was it an angle?
Sugar Ray Robinson.
Sugar Ray Roberts, right? Is that his name?
Do you mean, did you do Sugar Ray?
No.
Sugar Ray Robinson.
Sugar Ray Robinson was like a boxer, probably in the 50s, right?
Yeah. Wasn't there something between Don Murraco and him?
No.
I don't remember anything.
Not that I can remember.
Well, they said that in Raw magazine. I was just confirming if it was true or not.
We don't even know what it is to confirm.
Okay, and why wasn't the Great Muta on Nitro? Do you know?
I have no idea.
What's the what?
The Great Muta on Nitro. I was wondering that myself, since he's in the country.
Well, they were promoting it on their website. I just thought you guys would know.
I believe it or not, I have not talked to anyone that was there last night, other than to find out he wasn't there. I mean, no one in power to give me a reason as far as why he wasn't there or used. I mean, New Japan sent him. He might be on Thunder tonight, but I'm not even sure of that.
They were going to do the deal where he put that mask on Vampiro, and they wanted to tease it being Sting. Obviously, he couldn't be there.
Oh, do they think that does New Japan Pro Wrestling think that they're going to do it like they do with Jushin Thunder Liger and the bottle finish with Hoovy?
I don't think that they really care. I think that just the idea is that they want him on television in the United States so they can tell their people, because they're running an angle in New Japan that WCW stole Keiji Muto from them. And actually it's a way to keep him away because he's got bad knees, and he's just trying to rest his knees and everything like that. But they need to get him on at least a few television shows, or else that angle is like really stupid. It'd be like, when Rob Van Dam was Mr. Monday Night for 6 months before he became Mr. PPV, but he never wrestled on Monday night. So they're just trying to give like a sense of reality to their angle that, this company has, this evil American company has stolen their one of their top stars. So he just needs to make, it really doesn't matter what he does. He just has to be on the TV. That's the key.
Do you think he'll get a title shot or a world title shot or something like that?
That's up to the bookers. I don't think that they're anyone serious about programming him and doing anything with him. I think it's just making appearances on TV and just showing his face. I don't think that, as far as pushing him to the top, I don't think he's going to be around a lot. I mean, there's so much politics going that the guys who are full-time can't get those positions, so they're not going to bring a guy in from Japan, and give him that position, no matter how talented he, and good his rep is.
Also, is it true that XPW will invade ECW at Heatwave? Because they said something big will happen on July 16th. And then that's when the pay-per-view is.
XPW, going there and oh, God. I mean, they got lawsuits against each other, so I don't think they're going to do any interpromotional angle.
How would they invade? Hit the ring?
They won't hit the ring, but they might, I don't know, maybe they'll catcall from the stands. That'll just ruin the pay-per-view.
Have a big sign.
Yeah, they could do that, but then just take down the sign. I don't know.
Yeah, but you know what, though? That looks so ghetto for one group to be in the crowd holding up a sign for another group.
Yeah.
That's all that they'll do?
Well, if Paul Heyman, think about this, if Paul Heyman will not do business with WCW or with WWF as far as, doing a promotion versus promotion feud, why would he do anything with XPW?
No, couldn't it be a shoot? Would they be allowed in?
Not on television. I mean, I'm sure they're suing. I mean, they're suing each other. That's a shoot. Yeah. I mean, as far as what are they? As far as on the pay-per-view, what are they going to do? They're going to get arrested for trespassing or something, or interfering with the live show. No one's going to do that. I mean, if there's those kind of run-ins don't exist in the real world.
Like Vince McMahon, he said in a magazine that when ECW invaded Raw, that his lawyers were going to talk to them or something like that. That was the Philadelphia pay-per-view.
That was all an angle. That was 100% angle. 100%, start to finish. I mean, I know a lot of people didn't know that at the time, but I mean, it was 100% angle.
When Sandman spit in Savio Vega's face or whatever, it was all work.
100%, start to finish.
Okay, and do you guys know if the McMahon will wrestle again? Because I don't think they should.
I would say for sure. I would say for sure they will.
Well, they don't need to be main event. They could be mid-card or something like that. Will Shane go back to mid-card?
No. When you own the company, you're not a mid-carder. Doesn't matter.
Look at it this way: they got away with a pay-per-view with a 6-man tag on top.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that the other day, the King of the Ring, and I think that was one of his less spectacular pay-per-views of all time, but usually blow everything off with a 6-man, and he was able to blow it off with a 6-man.
But it's just like they're pushing David Flair or something like that, it's just they shouldn't push the product on you if you don't want it that much.
I know what you're saying with David, and I mean, I wish they had done it differently with David and trained him to be a good wrestler, and when he was ready, debut him rather than send him out there.
How many gyms does his dad own, and he hasn't gone to one of them?
Yeah, I know he was thrown in. He was thrown in there with a minimum. I mean, when he first started, when you talk about a minimum of training, I think he had one or two. Virtually nothing. They put him out there, way too quick. Which unfortunately, I mean, that's the story of WCW. WWF, when they have someone under contract, generally speaking, and of course Vince McMahon, of course, is the example that proves that this isn't always right. But usually, they don't bring guys in too quick. I mean, look at Angle. I mean, for months and months and months, when's Kurt Angle coming? But when he came exactly when he was ready. If he'd come too soon, he probably would have never made it as big as he did. Whereas WCW with those guys, Sean O'Hare last night, it was probably 6 months to a year too soon.
What'd you say about that? That's exactly, because you look at Angle, then you take before him Ken Shamrock, and those guys turned into pretty decent workers. Whereas in the past, as a rule, an old shooter or amateur wrestler would never turn into a decent professional wrestler.
Do you think that NCAA star that they signed, do you think he'll become a big professional wrestler? Will they do the same thing with him like they did with Shamrock and Angle?
Brock Lesnar?
Yeah.
They'll give him a chance. I mean, you never know. Like sight unseen. I mean, he's got a great look. The fact that he's a great amateur, that's both a plus and it can be a minus depending on the mindset. Depending on his mindset. I mean, if he goes in there with this mindset that in real life I'm an unbeatable amateur wrestler, what am I doing losing? If he starts thinking like that, he's already in trouble. If he starts thinking of it as sport and not entertainment, he's got to, I mean, Angle really has a hell of an attitude. I mean, if you really look at it, he doesn't mind losing, and he embraces the theatrical. Like a student of the game. He doesn't.
You gotta have it. You gotta have it. You either got it or you ain't got it.
Are they signing his brother to the WWF?
No, not yet. No, it's not his brother anyway. It's his nephew, Mark.
Well, there's been saying that it was his brother. That's all.
Yeah. He's got a nephew who just. Yeah, I know. I'd heard it was his brother too, but he was on the show and he said it was his nephew. That I think
Ross even said that.
Yeah, it's his nephew, not his brother. Mark.
And will The Rock lose the title next month quickly? Or
I don't even know what the card. I don't even know what the card is next month. Brian, do you even know what the card is?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. He's good on the microphone and he's a good champion. I just don't think they should give him the title this time. Maybe at SummerSlam or something.
I thought it was. I don't know. They changed it too much for my taste anyway. Because I mean, I thought Helmsley was a great champion. I really did, because he held it for a while and he got some big wins. And when he lost it,
he was in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
Talk about a guy that works hard, and he does work hard. But I don't see him with all that much charisma and stuff. I just with Stone Cold going and The Rock coming and this, and he held down that job spectacularly.
Will Austin come back soon? Because they've been saying SummerSlam or even longer than that.
He's got an appointment in August. I mean, seriously, until the middle of August, nobody really knows the answer. He's going to be examined in the middle of August, and then the doctor will say how well he healed, and based on how well he heals, he'll either come back for limited duty or he won't come back at all, or maybe he'll be able to come back full time, although that's a long ways off.
So until then, we're going to have Shane McMahon main event.
Not necessarily. I hope not. Look, it looks like they did something to keep him off for a little while.
Okay. Well, thanks for the time, and Rock, thanks for talking to me.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Okay, let's go to Masad in Pennsylvania. Masad, what's up?
Hello, how are you guys?
Very good.
I had a question about the King of the Ring paper. Kicked out of the pedigree. What was the deal with that?
They do that in main events a lot these days. It's kind of like
it was too anticlimactic. I mean, it wasn't in the middle of the ring. It looked like the Undertaker was supposed to come in there and break it up.
Oh, I think he was supposed
like
to pull.
That, where he didn't think the save was going to be, in time, so he kicked out.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the positioning, I thought Undertaker was supposed to pull him off, and I don't know if he did kick out and Undertaker did pull him off, and it kind of happened at the same moment.
Yeah, and my next question was, what's the deal with WCW doing, say, Great American Bash and Super Brawl and all those pay-per-views in the same building every year?
What do you mean? Oh, you mean just like the tradition of always going to Baltimore? Daytona. Yeah, Super Bowl's always Bay Area. Just a traditional thing that they're trying to build in different markets. I don't know if it'll work or not. It didn't work this year. but that didn't matter which buildings they were in. It wasn't going to anyway.
And my third question was, how's the combined pay-per-view from Mexico? Is that worth taking a look at?
It wasn't a pay-per-view. It was just a regular show. It's not
just a combined show?
Yeah, I had heard from a wrestling standpoint it wasn't that good. That was the report I got. I haven't seen it yet.
Okay. My last comment was, how funny was Kurt Angle when he said, I won 3 times last night. This guy lost.
Oh, yeah, with Mosley? Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah.
I'll go now.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, you're welcome. What do you think of Kurt Angle, Don?
What was that? Excuse me?
What do you think of Kurt Angle?
I think he's pretty good. I like him. I think he's got a good handle on the mic, and he's turned into a good professional wrestler. As I said earlier, you know, as a rule in the past, those kind of guys would never, you know, develop in professional wrestling because of attitude and stuff. But this guy, he looks, you know, he's right with it, and he moves well. He moves. I mean, you know, he was an athlete, of course, but he moves exceptionally well. Like I said earlier, that with Shamrock, you know, there's another guy you wouldn't expect, you know, to develop into much, and watch it. And you know, I guess you could knock him too, but just the way he came around, was able to do business. I see Kurt Angle pretty much in the same mold, coming across real good. I like him.
Who are, as far as the guys in the Today scene, who do you like to watch the most?
I like The Rock. I like McMahon's guys. You know, the way they have it. I like the Dudley boys. The white guy, the big white guy. I think he's got a lot of potential. I like McMahon's program. The way, you know, you figure if The Rock can only win one match out of 1 week out of 5, you know, and he's got everybody doing jobs there, and everybody, you know, everybody losing every week, and the way he keeps everybody over. I was in Japan with Jericho the last time I was there, and I was, you know, pretty impressed the way he's come up and the way he's handled the, you know, the mic and the crowd and everything else. There's a lot of good talent there.
Anyone on the other side?
I don't watch the other side too much. I've seen, I'm sure there's guys, you know, like the Steiner. I like Papa Pump, just because he's ripped to the max, you know.
Does he remind you of Billy Graham at all?
Not really.
Really?
No, he's more. Billy was as soft as a feather. Mm-hmm. You never even knew Billy was in the ring. You know, we're Steiner, Papa Pump. He gives me the impression that, you know, he can rock your world.
It comes through the television set, doesn't it?
Yeah. but Billy Graham, well, he was like a baby. You know, he was soft as a feather.
Were you and him friends?
Yeah, in fact, he was my last manager.
Right. Yeah, in the WWF run.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was a Rock, he was.
Did you probably work with him like different territories, running around too?
I worked with him in L.A. Wayne Cole when Dr. Jerry Graham was in the territory. This would have to be, 1970, 77, just before I went to Minneapolis. So I worked with him in L.A., and he came to Minneapolis. Then he was in Florida for a while. He'd come down to Florida when he was working for Vince already. So I knew Billy for a long time, from when I first got in the business. Wayne Coleman.
Now, do we have time to go for one more call, or should we just wrap it up? Okay, let's go to Jerry in Indiana. Jerry, you're going to be our last caller.
Yeah, hey, Dave. Thanks for getting me in.
Okay.
Three real quick questions here. First, do you think Kurt Angle will be able to turn more as a Triple H type of heel, more of a sadistic type of nature in him? Because I think that's the thing that people I've talked to are saying that when they saw him come out last night as Imperial Margin Boy, Margarine Boy, that wasn't what they were expecting as the guy who's your number 2 heel now, who looks like supposedly he's going to be starting up a program with The Rock.
Yeah, he has to do something real nasty, doesn't he?
Right.
slapstick comedy.
Everyone's aware of that, though. Yeah.
I was thinking that he was going to strike Triple H or The Rock with the scepter, last night, but I don't know. Second question, about Sunday Night Heat. When they move over, I'm assuming they're going to move that program to MTV once this.
Yes, September.
Are they going to make any format changes on there? Are they going to have is it going to be are they pushing it towards more a variety show because it is going to be on MTV?
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't.
You can guess though.
Yeah.
It'd be a world of difference.
Right. But I mean, I think the one thing that it seems like that's lacking there is, I kind of wish that they could do Sunday Night Heat, tape it on their Saturday night shows that they have, You
mean at a house show?
Right.
Yeah, that's it's too many days for everyone to be doing TV. I mean, they already got. I think that there are offers for them to do more television than because they're so hot right now.
Right.
I don't think that they want to do more than 2 days of television per week because it's just, everyone's making. I mean, if you watch shows, people are already making too many mental errors, which shows that they're overworked. So I think all those people kind of know that they just can't add to the workload of the production staff anymore.
But it just seems like. Since they tape it on Tuesday before SmackDown, one of the reasons why, it's losing ratings is you're not going to be able to put your top guys on there or even a lot of your mid-card guys on there. And you've taped it, it's airing 6 days later. Everybody, if you're on the Internet, you're going to know the results.
If that's the case with SmackDown, SmackDown does fine. I mean, I don't think. I mean, when Raw used to be taped, the ratings for the taped Raws were actually slightly higher than the ratings for the live Raw. So live versus taped to wrestling fans, I don't think that's really the thing. The reason why the Heat ratings are dropping is because it went from being the B show to the C show, and you only got so many hours in your life that you want to devote watching wrestling. And like with Brian and I, it's nothing against Heat. It's just that we watch so many hours of wrestling that Heat's the one that just doesn't make the cut.
Right.
Even though it's
not the only one, but one of them.
And my last real quick question goes to Mr. Murraco there. What is your opinion as far as the WWF has been trying to go away from, pile drivers and DDTs, stuff that would be focusing on the neck, a lot of neck injuries, perhaps, if it's done incorrectly. They're trying to save it for special occasions.
We're totally out of time. Don, real quick, any thought as far as how dangerous do you think the DDTs off the ropes, the pile drivers, dragon suplexes, and things like that, where they
I think you got to be public awareness that we're worried about kids are going to be trying to pull these things off. Basically, bottom line. I know you're rushed for time right now, but yeah, it's stuff you don't want to familiarize them with too much.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we've got to get running, Don. I want to thank you very much for doing the show. Brian, again, thanks for being here. Tomorrow we're going to have Ted DiBiase, and we'll see everyone at 6.